Hello again, hippie eclectic hope for Yang, finally coming back with part 2 of how Andrew Yang would have answered the debate topic questions as aired on the 20th of November. So as my camera cut me off, I got to where the moderators asked Cory Booker about his opinion on Trump again. And, he actually had a pretty good answer here by saying that, Donald Trump has done terrible things to fix the United States and our relations with our allies, and of course, needing to fix the issues. But then he pointed out that as a Rhodes Scholar, he brought Newark, New Jersey improvements beyond expectations, and that he can, he made the assumption that he can do that as president too. Such a much grander scale project. And I don't think he's taking, proper respect on that. But, he at least has some good to show for his work. He's been really kicking butt and taking names and improving conditions. So, definitely props to Cory Booker on this answer. But, Andrew Yang would have said, pretty much the same thing about Trump, that, he's inexcusable, but he's only a symptom of the wider spread problem that we're in the middle of the fourth industrial revolution and we are not handling it. We're blaming our allies, distancing ourselves from our allies. We are making enemies out of victims across the world who are trying to be survivors. We've started concentration camps again. The United States has really sunk to some terrible lows, especially under the Trump administration. And, but Andrew Yang's, his solution to that is to fix the bigger problems that got Donald Trump elected. And that's why he's released 160 policies on his website. But, Andrew Yang would have cited his experience with Ventures for America and with the Obama administration. And, noting the ways that he could make more grand-scale improvements as President of the United States. Andrew Yang has a very concrete plan laid out. But moving on, I swear most of this debate was about anger baiting. The moderators moved on asking Bernie Sanders his opinion on the people chanting "Lock Trump up," like Trump used to get his crowds excited about criminally charging Hillary for the emails, lock up Hillary. But Sanders, like most people in the debate, didn't directly answer the question, so much as he gave a sort of related answer that sounded like he'd memorized it earlier. Nobody should be above the law, which, is, of course, obvious. But he didn't say anything about the lock Trump up chanters. He said, the pain of working families gives us the need for a $15 minimum wage, taking no consideration into stay-at-home parents and caretakers of family members. And, the climate crisis, Bernie Sanders says, gives us need for sustainable fuels, which is, obvious. And Donald Trump has been, denying the climate crisis. But, his other actions give us a need to impeach him, which, certainly, but years ago, not now, not in the middle of another campaign year. But, as I said earlier, Bernie Sanders didn't mention the lock Trump up protesters at all, in refusing to address that, and by reiterating that Trump needs to be prosecuted and impeached. He actually, unofficially endorsed the mob-like behavior, which gives us a bit of insight into the mentality of the more outspoken Bernie bros we encounter online and in real life. Andrew Yang, on the other hand, would have specified the importance of uniting the Democratic Party and the American people to vote Donald Trump out of office in 2020 and, and find the way to move forward instead of focusing on destroying someone. And of course, he would have spoken out against the anger inherent in the mob-like behavior of lock Trump up, lock Trump up. That's not appropriate. There needs to be due process. Of course, it's obvious that Trump has done many inexcusable things in his time as president, but, Andrew Yang would focus on how we need to move not left, not right, but forward, instead of wasting our time and attention on attacking someone who frankly doesn't care who attacks him. It only gives him more power and, that infamous status that he enjoys, that so many abusers actually enjoy. And then the moderators going back and forth with Biden and Sanders, asking them more impeachment questions. Joe Biden actually, gave my, the best thing that he's had to say in this campaign, as far as I'm concerned, is, that this impeachment deal, this is all the Justice Department's job. This is not for the future presidential candidates to decide on. We all know that Trump needs removal. But, it's not going to solve the problem to have everyone debating on whether he needs to be impeached. It's just going to divide the nation further. Even though Trump needs to go, this isn't the way to do it. And, that's where Andrew Yang agrees. And, but he has more to say on it. But, after this second impeachment block of questions, the moderators finally ask Andrew Yang a question. Wow. And it's a good question about paid family medical leave. This is amazing. And Yang, many people agree with me on this, but he completely won the debate when he said that we in Papua New Guinea are the only industrialized nations without paid family medical leave, and we need to get off that very short list as quickly as possible. 2/3 of the determining factors in a child's future, he continued, have to do with events in the home. Of course, 2/3 of his life is here. Well, the child's life. So the freedom dividend and the 160 and counting other policies would make that time at home less stressful and much more productive. And nobody else touches on that. The environment in the home is something to be ignored. It's all put on the schools. And of course, then everyone else had to jump on the bandwagon. Kamala Harris is also in favor of paid family medical leave. And Klobuchar would give us 3 months of paid leave. She says it could be paid for with her plans, but, she says our obligation is to be fiscally responsible, yet help our people thrive, which is something as a mom, as a poor mom, I'm all in favor of. But, Andrew Yang, as we know, has the most comprehensive plans. But, as the moderators went back and forth, Harris said she would go further to give us 6 months of paid leave because, we're becoming parents in our 30s and 40s instead of our 20s, and many people are caring for children and parents at the same time. We need more time at home with our families, and, women especially need this help. It would help income inequality to end by giving, the paid family medical leave, because, a lot of women get their 6 weeks of unpaid leave and then they find out that they've been replaced. It's against the law to replace workers on the, permanently on family leave, but they do it anyway, and they always come up with some, more qualified sort of sounding answer, but it's really not. It's just, it's more convenient to get rid of a mom who had a baby than it is to actually give her a chance to come back to work, and be a financially supportive mom. But, so I kind of agree with what Harris said, but she puts too much of her focus on only helping, African American women, whereas, women of color and disabled women and other people who need help, men, disabled vets, so many people need help, but she's focusing on a very narrow part of, the American population, and, that's just going to cause more conflict in our nation. So, but, the moderators moved on from family medical leave, asking Steyer about the rent price crisis. He said that the home is the factor in everything. Of course, if you have and we know how important it is to have a home to call our own. And, homelessness is rampant. We need new housing units, which I agree on, complexes, not just a house, not just an apartment. But, we need to make these new units sustainable too, instead of just sucking up government money or built to take money from rich people and kick poor people to the curb. And I aspire to institute new policies and taxes to cover all this. But, of course, Andrew Yang has all of this covered at yang2020.com/policies/every vet under a roof initiative, surrounded by hyphens. And he also has single parent assistance in his policies. So, he's also going to include rent assistance with their freedom dividend, which, not making us opt out of it, which will be a great help to prevent myself, my son, and any, other people who struggle with financial, being able to put a roof over our heads. This would keep us from being made homeless again. But the Section 8 voucher, is all right. My son and I have a 2-bedroom apartment, and our cat is a registered companion animal. So, some human can't force me to suffer their abuse so they can pay their rent, at home in a workplace to keep us living indoors. Elizabeth Warren, when asked, suggested that a government program for 3.2 million new housing complexes in the U.S. along with the Elizabeth Warren, when asked, suggested that a government program for 3.2 million new housing complexes in the country. But, she touched a bit on how the current housing plans discriminate against poor people, and current government housing complexes quickly turn into gangland, which I've experienced quite a bit of that, and this needs a lot of work. And the moderators returned to Cory Booker for the rent crisis for his thoughts on it, and he suggests that the rent prices be recovered in our yearly tax return. But, I for one can't afford to get socked for the extortionist rent price for a whole year and then hope I get my taxes back. And for that matter, I don't get my taxes back because, I have student loan debt and I have unfair tax judgments like the Wisconsin unemployment judge who went golfing with my former employer. Doug Condon took Judge James Moe golfing so that the judge would deem me to be guilty of unemployment fraud, where I was living on unemployment while being forced to work unpaid by Douglas Condon. I was helping build his condos from, they were basically gutted units, and, he needed work with his computer business. I was forced to work unpaid. I was forced to buy supplies. And when I reported all this to unemployment, I was assigned to a judge, James Moe, whom I was unaware of before the hearing. However, he had a chance, this judge, to schedule a golf outing with Doug Condon. And I know this because at the end of the hearing, Judge James Moe turned off the recording unit, the tape recorder, 80s style, and confirmed, hey, Doug, we still going golfing on Saturday? Meanwhile, the work that we did at the Watertown Golf Club did not come up in the hearing at all. It wasn't mentioned, specific customers, because that's confidential. However, because of our work there, Doug Condon got 1 year free membership at the golf club, and I didn't get so much as a t-shirt at the pro shop or a set of golf balls or anything. My cats would have loved a little box of golf balls, but yeah, nothing to it. I literally got paid $0 for the 6 months I was forced to work for Douglas Condon. And so because of that, and because he had the ability and the power to take Judge James Moe golfing, I was deemed guilty of unemployment fraud. And so my taxes get taken by the state of Wisconsin and by the Department of Education because I can't afford to pay either unjust actions, unjust bills. my Department of Education, my schooling, I went to a criminal justice school. I wanted to bust online child molesters and online criminals. Would have been a perfect degree plan for me, a perfect career path. This just made for me, But nobody in law enforcement would hire a disabled woman to do any, looking into computer crimes, because according to them, if any of these computer criminals finds out that I'm disabled, I would be a sitting duck for any assassins that they might want to send to stop my work. So the police department would offer no protection, and I'd just be there to get shot. So that's why, $20,000 shot right in the butt, because I can't get a job with a prejudicial law enforcement community. And after what I've experienced with the law enforcement community, being unjustly arrested for something that, I got arrested in Denver for possession of cocaine, which, as a former owner, he'd refuse to testify, but people know I just don't tolerate uppers. I barely deal with caffeine when I can't wake up in the morning, but I'm part of the reason why I left Wisconsin was because the person who was allowing me to habitate indoors was a coke addict, and I'd rather be homeless than be dependent on a coke addict. So, being dependent upon someone who's dependent upon a terrible drug is not a path I wish to continue down, and I couldn't continue surviving in Wisconsin, because if you're homeless in Wisconsin, you're arrested for vagrancy. I'm not a criminal. I'm just a disabled woman who refuses to live in substandard, dehumanizing conditions. And so I left Wisconsin, and 4 months into my attempt to exist in Denver, I had been arrested for possession of something that I don't tolerate. The police did an illegal search and seizure on my car that I lived in, and found my empty marijuana container, which is my medication. Legally, by the state of Colorado, I have a medical permit, and, an extended plant card, too. So the police did an illegal search and seizure, found my marijuana container, which sparkled on the inside, and arrested me for cocaine. So that prevented me from getting any sort of employment for the next 3 years. So because of that, I was forced to live selling cigarettes, because I was licensed to do so as a, overly licensed former gas station employee. So that's the only thing I could legally do, was sell cigarettes out on the street. And that's how my current owner, who was the friend I made at the battered women's shelter in Wisconsin because he was a volunteer there, he became homeless, went to Denver, and he took me as his property because I was selling cigarettes for a living, and I couldn't afford a $1,400 apartment on cigarettes. So I was living in my car until the Denver police stole it for the second time, and bogus parking tickets. Street sweeping next to a 2-hour zone for half an hour, parking meter hadn't expired, bogus parking tickets, which I was rendered unable to pay for, fight, etc. by my now former owner, Thomas Stetzer, who's currently existing in Denver. And even though I just found out he has a full-time job because his probation officer made him, he's not paying one dime in child support. And I'll probably never see child support, because when you're on welfare, the welfare agencies take the child support to, reimburse them for their trouble taking care of me and my family. So, this is what Andrew Yang wants to erase with the American Malls Act. This would allow me to move back somewhere cheap and, get an old Sports Authority building or a Herberger's or a Piggly Wiggly or a Shopko and turn it into a craft shop, for all of my jewelry, all of my apparel, for anything that other local artists make. The freedom dividend to help me pay my rent for my home and my shop space, and help me develop my online store, because I'm currently using free programming, I could go on for hours detailing the constant, all-encompassing ways that Wisconsin devised, and Colorado and every other state in this union devised, to make rampant abuse and exploitation of disabled people a perfectly legal action. When we're raped or assaulted or murdered, or somebody tries to kill us, or we're forced into unpaid labor, it's just another day in the United States. For people of color, the LGBTQ community, and people with disabilities, we endure these things all day, every day. And Andrew Yang would erase a lot of the power that these exploiters have with his 160 policies. There are too many people from all over the U.S. who are traveling the country seeking refuge in other parts of the U.S. and failing to actually find that safety, finding the same dehumanizing conditions everywhere. That's why my son and I are going to Canada. Two of my neighbors in this building attempted to kill my son and me because I'm disabled and we're Caucasian. And the attacks, no charges were filed, no arrests were made, because they made the fraudulent claim that I used the N-word. Now, I've been held as people's property my entire life. I abhor the N-word and all other stigmas and slurs and disgusting ways we talk about each other. I hate those words and I hate that treatment. But the N-word is a get-out-of-jail-free card when a person of color decides to try to kill a cripple woman today. And it's a disgusting policy, but it's so universal all over the United States. Andrew Yang has the best ideas to solve these problems, but it's going to take so much time for the humans to understand that it's not okay to beat your cripple. Joe Biden's talking about it's not okay, we have to get our young men involved in learning ways to not hit women. We need to get our humans involved in ways to not hit subhumans, or to classify us as subhumans. This needs to end. This is rampant. It's all around the country. We need, seriously, a cracker fire department to, be there to, catch the tape recordings that we get, or any other evidence that we bring that we've been, treated to prejudice. This needs to stop. But as far as the housing crisis goes, forget all the other myriad of problems with the United States. Let's just focus on the housing crisis for now. Andrew Yang's idea for communal housing is even better. He has great ideas for veterans, he has great ideas for single parents, but the communal housing for singles and single parents is great. We've all seen the shuttered hotels and malls, but these buildings will be revamped. They can be. Imagine that there would be private suites with each family's apartment, with the bedrooms, the bathrooms, a small living room, some closets and storage areas. But these housing complexes, these little suites, would also have a huge communal kitchen, a laundromat, and activity social areas, like, your foosball table, your pool table, your dartboard, your, whatevers. And a nice yard and stuff because, it's all nice communal living. So you don't have to have these big spaces in each individual unit. You can have big public areas with some small private areas. And, in these complexes, there'd be chore lists to ensure that all the families and individuals pitch in, and it would also limit the need for supervisory staff. It wouldn't be a place with a warden. It would be a place with some counselors to help out around the complex. Neighbors would then be working as a community to yield positive development for all families involved instead of working everyone to themselves and, fighting each other. Neighbors could help watch each other's children and earn what Andrew Yang calls social credits. Yeah, nobody has heard about social credits, right, except for Yang Gang. That's basically what we call, well, I prefer to call karma points. You help each other out and you get little points on an app and you cash in those points for babysitting or flowers in your yard or whatever. And with these, little communal complexes, This would save on child care expenses with the neighbors helping with each other's children, and it would help children of single parents socialize instead of hiding out in the home all day. And if there are any DV situations, as there are so often within communities with single parents and disabled parents and people of color, the abuser wouldn't have, nearly as easy a time holding their captives in total isolation, silence, or under constant threat of death, like my former owner Thomas Stetzer did for almost 5 years, and my biological mother did for my first 18 years. I didn't get to have friends, I got to do chores. That's what life was. It was serving the human in charge. But, moving onward in the debate, Buttigieg was asked a question about the crisis for American farmers, which, I'm from Wisconsin, this is important. He emphasized that the farmer situation is very dire since the China trade war started. They're not buying our produce. And Trump's bailout checks are a lousy slap in the face so-called supplement, and it's left farming families without much hope or much productivity. They're just kind of sitting waiting for something better to happen. But Mayor Pete, says he would support farmers who embrace climate-friendly farming methods like windmills and solar panels and etc. and vertical farming. And he'd continue the existing subsidies that Trump put in place until the farming crisis is fixed and until vast improvements are made for climate-friendly farming. There are less cows for less methane and all sorts of things that farmers could do to make the, climate crisis less harsh and, saving farming space or, hydroponic farming or so many other methods that could be used to make this easier and better for everyone. But, Tulsi Gabbard was, of course, she had to be asked about the climate crisis. She's from Hawaii. This has been her major focus. But her plan is to create more incentives for sustainable fuels, like to get us off oil and coal and get us onto solar and wind and, water power and all this good stuff. But, she says flat out that this is a multi-presidential problem, and Andrew Yang agrees completely. So, we'll need to cooperate with the whole world forever to continue combating the climate crisis. As in Trump pulling out of the Paris Agreement, bad plan. We'll also need healthier foods, less sugar, less processing. Tom Steyer, when he was called on, didn't say anything specific about, he says he's so focused on the climate, but he didn't say anything specific. Besides, instituting a plan to declare a state of emergency regarding the climate crisis, because Code Red just will make us get busy on it. I disagree completely. And, kind of reinforced my belief that he bought his way into the election, into this process. Then they called back on, Tulsi Gabbard, and she had, the best ideas out of those expressed. But again, nobody let Yang speak. He has given ways to combat the crisis, the climate crisis, right on his, yang2020.com/blog/climate-change. Getting off fossil fuels and onto something more sustaining and less polluting is definitely the key here. And that's where a Yang Gabbard ticket would just make it happen. But, and then Joe Biden was called on, and he tried to take credit for getting all our best climate laws passed while Steyer mined coal, which, gives me a little insight into why Tom Steyer says he focuses so much on the climate but doesn't have much to, show for it, It's a pretty big burn that Joe Biden put on Tom Steyer here. But, Steyer was having none of that. He retorted saying that he made his climate drive 10 years ago while Congress has never passed an important climate bill. I'm not sure on fact-checking on that one, but it makes me want to go research. But, then Bernie Sanders was called upon for this. He insisted that we need to fix the climate problem right now, but he has no plans mentioned or, any regard to present or future, actions. But he said that we need to sue big oil, which kind of, I wonder if the Bush family's kind of shaking in their boots a bit. But, the moderators flipped the conversation again because every time it gets too heated, they got to switch topics. And they asked Kamala Harris about Trump's foreign policy. And she said that Trump makes world-changing, catastrophic decisions with his fragile ego and his Twitter account. And, that I have to agree with. I've got Trump blocked. I hope a lot of us have Trump blocked. He's just not worth listening to. But, Harris says we need our military to be not only vibrant, but truthful and loyal as well. We need to repair relationships with our alienated allies, which, of course is true, but she doesn't say, how. But Joe Biden, just gets on to saying how we can all work together again. We need to fix alliances with our abandoned friends. But he just goes on to slam Trump a whole lot after that. So, that's the game of the day is slam Trump. But Bernie Sanders, when he gets called on, he reminds us that he voted against the Gulf Wars and he would end the forever wars, which, is why I was a supporter of his, before I was introduced to the Yang campaign. I was a freshman in high school when 9/11 happened, and many people I know and went to school with went to war, and if my classmates ever came back, they were changed, mentally and physically forever, So Andrew Yang was called on then, and he steps in with some levity to help us all move forward. His message is, hey Putin, sorry I beat your guy. I need to make a meme shirt on that. That's really great. That needs to be in the Yang shop. But, he goes on to say that, he gets real on this. Any further meddling with our political affairs will be seen as a threat and will prosecute swiftly and strongly. The U.S. needs to invest more heavily in diplomacy rather than warfare, and we also need to do much better with data control. We just click on the use cookies button and we have no idea what we're getting ourselves into. Next thing you know, we're getting phone calls about, hey, you wanted auto insurance? No, I missed the X button on the ad. But then Cory Booker, got called on and tries to follow Andrew Yang by sounding all epic, China and Russia have broken a myriad of laws, we've abandoned our allies, and Cory Booker claims to be the damage control that we need here. Joe Biden joined the bandwagon, saying that China needs to face justice for all their human rights violations. But, again, that's not really our job, is it? We have a lot of human rights violations going on here in the United States, and Andrew Yang wants to address those problems. But at this point in the debate, I got horribly interrupted by Aaron because, mom duties and all that. But, trying to get him some food, trying to get him settled into bed, But, single mom got to be busy. But I finally got Aaron settled into bed sometime during Andrew Yang's next answer. He said that we need to end white supremacy, that these groups become so powerful because they're good at reaching troubled youth. Churches reach out with messages that, why they're superior to other churches. Hate groups reach out with messages of, hey, we can help you with your troubled life, let's take down some people of color. It's dumb, but it works. Sign off again because Aaron just woke up from his nap. Hi, buddy.
Mommy did a great job.
I cleaned up the living room while he took a nap, and then I got the video camera started. But I will let you go until I get another chance when he's asleep, hopefully tonight. But I should be able to get finished with a part 3. So.
That's to you. Let me show you.
Anywho, I will catch you all again. Have a wonderful day. I hope to get finished soon.